Christopher Bivens, the Assistant District Attorney Donald Dodds, eyewitness. We will get to him here in a second. But for a few minutes, we'll leave this article visible so you can see exactly what Sheriff Nellis did with Richard's van. It became a sideshow. Nellis claimed it was to get any witness to confirm Richard Thibodeaus' van was definitely the van seen at the D&W store. We will give you a moment to read its contents. On the witness stand, Christopher Bivens presented himself to the jury as a man of absolute certainty. He was a 39-year-old auto mechanic and engine builder from Watertown who boasted under oath that when it came to auto body repair, he was the best there is. When asked about the early morning hours of Easter Sunday, April 3rd, 1994, the day Heidi Allen vanished, Bivens laid out a meticulously packed holiday schedule. He claimed he woke up at 6 a.m. at his Oswego residence and hit the road by 7:30 a.m. His destination was Mexico, New York, where he intended to check on a piece of property, visit a female acquaintance, and attend services at two separate churches, one in Albion and another in the village of Mexico. As Bivens described driving past the D&W convenience store, his narrative transformed into a high-definition thriller. He swore to the jury that he witnessed a young woman actively struggling in a violent bear hug, held against her will by a husky white male. Nearby, an older white male walked toward a vehicle parked by the gas pumps. Bivens' mechanical expertise took center stage when he identified that vehicle. With unshakable confidence, he declared it was a full-size Chevy C10 van, specifically identifying the body style as a 1987 or 1988 model. He painted a picture of absolute visual clarity, describing micro-movements of the victim's arms pinned straight down against her body. Yet, curiously, this master of observation could not recall a single detail about what the victim or her captors. The pristine narrative began to fracture the moment defense attorney, Mr. Fahey, stepped up to the podium for cross-examination. Rather than testing Bivens' memory of the crime scene, Fahey turned the clock back to April 8, 1994, the day Bivens first picked up the phone to call the Oswego County Sheriff's Department. Confronted with the official police log of that initial phone call, Defendant's Exhibit E, Bivens' high-definition memory, suffered a sudden, catastrophic blackout. He could no longer recall the date he called, the name of the deputy he spoke to, or the logistics of his own timeline. When pressed on discrepancies, Bivens grew fiercely combative, retreating behind a defensive shield. I know what I saw. But the written record told a completely different story. In his original call to the police, Bivens hadn't claimed to leave his house at 7:30 a.m. Instead, he told the deputy he drove past the D&W station between 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., a major shift that disrupted his timeline. Furthermore, he hadn't reported a dramatic parking lot kidnapping next to a van. On that morning, he told the police he merely saw two men arguing with a girl on the front porch of the station. Most damaging of all was the sudden transformation of the suspect vehicle. The expert auto mechanic, who swore to the jury that he spotted a highly specific Chevy van, was forced to listen as his own words were read back to him. On the phone with the deputy, Bivens had actually been completely unsure what he saw, stating it was a pickup truck or a van, and openly admitting, I think there was a van there, but I'm not sure. When Fahey asked Bivens if reading the police log helped refresh his memory, Bivens stonewalled the courtroom, repeating a flat, defensive refrain, I do not remember. As the cross-examination intensified, Fahey drove the knife deeper into Bivens' credibility by introducing his sworn grand jury testimony from August 25th. If the discrepancies in his initial police reports were cracks, his grand jury statements were a total collapse of the prosecution's star witness. Fahey read the official transcript aloud to a silent courtroom. Months earlier, when asked under oath if he saw any persons in the D&W parking lot, Bivens had responded, No one. I was in that parking lot. There were no other vehicles other than the girl's vehicle, which was a station wagon. He had even gone so far as to identify the color, a maroon wagon. The contradiction was absolute. Before the grand jury, there were no captors, no violent bear hugs, and entirely no Chevy van. There was only an empty parking lot and a maroon station wagon. Trapped by his own historical testimony, Bivens' narrative coherence completely dissolved. He abandoned any attempt to logically reconcile the two stories and fell back on total amnesia, telling the defense, "I do not remember anything anymore. It's been over a year. I don't recall." Then came the most damning revelation of the trial. Fahey pressed Bivens on why his timeline had fundamentally changed from his earliest statements to his appearance in front of the jury. Bivens cracked, openly admitting on the record that his memory had been retroactively adjusted based on what law enforcement told him. He conceded that he backtracked on his times because they had told you about what times things were occurring. The eyewitness had allowed the police to write his memory for him. With his credibility in tatters, a profound logistical question hung over the courtroom. How had a regular civilian witness managed to drastically reshape his collapsing narrative to perfectly fit the prosecution's timeline? The answer emerged during a shocking sequence of cross-examination, revealing a bizarre twist that sounded more like a spy thriller than a standard legal proceeding. Bivens confessed under oath that he had received highly confidential, restricted legal documents, including official grand jury transcripts and previous police statements, sent directly to his home. The sender, he claimed, was entirely anonymous. They had simply arrived in his mailbox from an unknown source. Instead of turning the leaked, sealed court materials over to authorities, Bivens admitted that he sat down with the package and used the anonymously delivered transcripts to heavily study, brief, and rehearse his narrative before walking into the courtroom. This mystery delivery served as the ultimate playbook. It allowed a compromised witness to see exactly where his original lies conflicted with the state's official theory, providing him with the exact script needed to align his shifting story before taking a stand in front of a live jury. In a desperate bid to salvage their crumbling case, the prosecution attempted a redirect examination. Mr. Dodds stepped forward to guide Bivens back to the safety of the original script, leading him through a series of rigid questions designed to reestablish the presence of the three people and the van. But Bivens was visibly unraveling. When asked to account for his inability to describe the kidnappers, Bivens snapped every time he was caught in a lie, and he would respond with a phrase, "Whatever." He offered a bizarre defense mechanism that exposed his defensive mindset. "I'm a body repair man. I don't check out guys. I look at women. Men don't interest me." To explain away the emptiness of his early statements, Bivens completely reversed his courtroom persona. The hyper-focused witness who claimed to see the exact alignment of a victim's arms from a moving car now claimed he simply wasn't looking. "I did not pay that much attention because there's always women and men fighting," he muttered, explaining that he simply didn't want to get involved. Finally, Bivens inadvertently detailed the exact process by which his false memory was manufactured. He admitted that when investigators initially showed him photographs of Gary Thibodeaus' van, he couldn't identify it because the pictures were too dark and unclarified. He confessed that he had to go home after the police interviews and actively try and remember the vehicle. It was during this gap, after seeing the state's target vehicle, that his mind suddenly generated the details of a low-hanging hitch, rust, a stripe, and two-tone paint. He hadn't seen those details on Easter Sunday. He had adopted them from the photographs provided by the state. By the time Christopher Bivens was ordered to step down from the stand, the portrait of an objective eyewitness was gone. Left in its place was a deeply flawed, highly defensive witness whose story had evolved from seeing a pickup truck or an empty parking lot into a hyper-detailed, state-sponsored narrative engineered exclusively for trial. The issue with Bivens is simple. A liar changes his testimony. A liar with something to gain. Bivens had 25,000 reasons to lie. Bivens changed the color of the vehicle, from no vehicles to a mysterious van. His times weren't what he told them from day one. They were built to frame around a last checkout time they determined of 7:42, the narrative the DA and sheriff office designed. Bivens stated he looked back and he saw nothing. And with that, no one that morning can give Bivens an alibi. Not one person saw Bivens on his journey that Easter Sunday morning. No one can confirm because no one saw Bivens either that morning. Bivens saw nothing and no one saw Bivens.